Hello, this is Marie Hamon, and welcome to the Resiliency Coach podcast. This podcast showcases people who have faced difficult times and how they got through it. These experiences are real and sometimes raw. Please be advised that these podcasts could trigger unresolved emotions. Please also be aware that the people who share their stories are here to tell you you're not alone in your struggle. They share the tools and resources they use in healing. If you're looking for solutions for getting through tough times, contact us at www.resiliency.coach. This is not medical advice. All opinions expressed by the interviewee are their own personal opinions and not necessarily those of the Resiliency Coach. So today I'm interviewing my friend, Monica Maria Aparicio. She's a 5D intuitive mentor, master teacher, and founder of Sacred Community. So thank you, Monica, for being my guest today on my podcast.
Thank you, Kelly, for having me.
You're welcome. Would you please tell us your story?
Sure. So I think that there are many different times in life, but there are certain times that we all know this expression, the dark night of the soul. There are certain experiences that really mark us. And for me, I would have to say I can't really say it was one thing happening because it felt like everything was happening at once. And I'm sure that this is a common theme with people that you're speaking to. So here goes. So in 2016, I broke up with a boyfriend. I had been living with him for about a year, and my cat of 19 years died the month prior. And I just kind of fell into a depression, wondered, I was pretty far from friends and family where I was living. And so I just decided to move suddenly to a friend's place, temporary place, Brooklyn. It was an outlawed loft, bedrooms without windows, and one of them was mine. So at the time I had been experiencing dealing with asthma for about 17 years. And I got sick, had a cold, was in bed for maybe 2 or 3 days, ended up in the ER because I couldn't breathe. Went home back to lay down and turned the lights on and saw that I was sleeping under black mold, and I didn't know because of the way that the bed was positioned. So now I had this view of the ceiling. I could see the black mold. Ended up in the ER again the following day. Showed the doctors to make sure what it was. They said, you need to leave immediately. So I went back home. I put some stuff in a roller suitcase. I left my other cat there. And I spent the next 18 months living out of that roller suitcase and nursing myself back to health from this black mold exposure and the previous heartbreak of the loss. And it just, wow, it was a whole package. It was a mind, body, spirit experience. So I think before I was going to say something about when something happens, it feels like it all happens at once. It's like when it rains, it pours, that saying. And that was the journey. That was my dark night of the soul. But also such a huge blessing.
So why was it a huge blessing?
I learned so much about myself from the experience of really being asked to go completely out of my comfort, not only from not having the basic of a home, but my body was out of whack because black mold poisoning really affects your body on so many different levels. I was foggy. I couldn't think clear. I couldn't remember my phone number. I couldn't remember my address where I had lived. Couldn't focus. I was experiencing night sweats. I couldn't control my body temperature. I had about even 3. I remember having 3 menstrual cycles. I had stomach pain that wouldn't go away, whether I ate or didn't eat or whatever I did. And that lasted several months, and it was like the dead of winter. I'm rolling the suitcase in the middle of New York City winter. It's bitter cold. But I really learned, so it really just pushed me to my edges and I feel that when that happens, you grow. And so that was one experience in just expansion. And also, I would say the biggest lesson I took away from it was faith. What does it really mean to have faith, to know that you're going to be okay, and to trust to trust, And it was interesting because I always joke and I say I had the most posh homeless life, luxurious homeless life, because I don't think there was, as I never slept on the street. I don't think there was ever a time maybe twice, I slept on a sofa. Other than that, people handed me the keys to their homes. I ended up in a gorgeous loft in Soho with my own bedroom and a jacuzzi. And I went to Bali because I had a friend sponsor me to go there. I thought, well, whatever little money I have, it's going to last a lot longer in Bali. A woman I had just met was going to travel to, she was going to Australia. She said, well, I'm not going to be home. Here are the keys to my villa for 2 weeks. So it was just an interesting experience. And it was an adventure. So it was a huge blessing. I feel very expanded and like I grew and learned a lot, not just about myself, but about life.
Wow, that sounds like an incredible experience, a painful one though, with getting so sick. I heard that some of the things you used as resources to be able to get through that difficult time was the hospital, obviously doctors, and most likely medications, is my guess too, as well as moving out of the place. And now you left a boyfriend, is that correct? And at the same time, your older cat passed away. The boyfriend, was that just because you just didn't like him anymore, or was there a reason why you left him?
I felt that I wasn't getting the emotional support that I needed. And I was very far removed from family and friends. And I didn't see why I would put myself through that when I could just pick up and go.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so what gave you the courage to leave that?
I think it was the awareness that I wasn't happy. I was depressed because my cat had died. And I just decided one day that I had had enough of sitting there. I think it was a decision, and I think that in life, everything really does come down to the decisions that we make. And sometimes it's the time between decisions. It's like, well, how long are you going to wait for that? And it doesn't really matter what the circumstance is. It could be all kinds of suffering, just relationships that aren't working out, being really ill and sick. And then it makes all the difference. I think I learned how to make really good decisions. That experience taught me discernment. I've never been one that waited too long. Anyways, I'm a little impulsive.
And I'm sorry for the pun here, but and it's not meant to be a pun. However, it was your cat who was the catalyst for you to be leaving your boyfriend. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, sorry about that. And if you had a piece of advice for somebody else that may have gone through what you've gone through, what piece of advice would you give them?
I just want to say that it doesn't have to be going homeless, or it could be anything really. Anyone that's going through a dark night of the soul. It's called a dark night of the soul for a reason. And if you can just allow yourself to really go inward and just connect with what could be a valuable lesson that you're picking up from this experience in your life, You know, what's the gold you can walk away with? Because then it shifts your thinking about it. And I think it helps give you strength to move on, to try to, change your circumstance. Definitely. I mean, in hindsight, when I was in the middle of it, that's not what I did. I'm giving you that that advice from the back end of it. For someone that's in it, I think it's just surrender and be willing to open to guidance.
And what kind of guidance did you find?
I think it was a remembering, like a remembering of, well, who am I really? And I think that's what's really what makes difficult times blessings. Challenges become blessings when we can really connect back and remember something that we might have forgotten. And I think it's just really getting to know the essence of who you are, which is why it's called the dark night of the soul.
So who did you find out that you were?
A really strong person. A really strong person. A very creative and resourceful person, and a very trustworthy person. People trusted me. They really, like I said, people that I didn't really know gave me the keys to their homes.
That's very nice. So there's a number of stories there. The passing of a longtime friend, your cat, because often people who have animals, they become a part of the family, as well as you left a boyfriend, and then you became extremely sick, and then you became homeless because you made the decision to leave the literally toxic environment that was making you physically ill. And so your piece of advice is to look inward, to look for the blessings, and to find out who you are also. Is there any other advice that you would give? And it sounds like you had a lot of good friends to begin with, and you weren't afraid to reach out to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think it's really important to ask for support as much as you can. And sometimes that support will come through a friend or a family member. And sometimes it may come through a stranger. And I experienced both of those things. So definitely seeking, not being afraid to ask for support, seeking community, and also putting tools in your toolbox, like actual activities that are going to help you mentally, emotionally, physically. I started listening to affirmations. You can find anything on YouTube these days. I love binaural beats. I love resources. I think that there's so many things out there. Journaling, art making. I made a lot of art. I think anything that helps you make that connection with yourself. For some people, it's dance. For some people, cooking, yes, as well. There's so many things that you can do.
Searching for things that are outside of you that help you to get inside of you.
Yes, I like the way you put it. Mm-hmm.
And what it sounds like to me are things that are creative.
Yes.
Is what helps you, as well as the affirmations. How does creativity help you to find yourself?
I love that question. So the essence of the self, from my understanding, is spiritual in nature, hence dark night of the soul. And spirit is just the essence of all that exists. It is creation. So when we engage in the act of being creative, of having some kind of creative process, and relating to it, we are tapping into the energy of life. And I think that for me, when I was going through that very difficult period, there were times where I just felt like I had lost my desire for life. A little different than suicidal, but definitely like that spark had been kind of like crushed. And so that's why I think creativity is such a nice and direct channel of communication with that energy. And it helps to lift you up and bring you back into that space where there's hope.
I agree. And affirmations, did you create these yourself, or did you find them in a book or a video or an audio? How did you find them?
So I did both. It's interesting because before we got on here, I was playing with them, with my affirmations, because I have them written on these index cards. And funny enough, the very first stack, are the ones that I wrote out myself. And I think that for anybody else who wants to work with affirmations, keep it simple. Keep it really to the point, and always work with the present tense. I am very simple. I just kind of wrote out what I needed at the moment. And
can you read out some of those? Do you mind sharing some of them? And are these affirmations things that you already believe about yourself, or are they things that you want to believe about yourself?
Oh, such a good question. So I think for most people, affirmations are a combination. For me personally, it is a combination. Oftentimes, if I write it and if it's too far off into the future where I haven't yet integrated it as a belief of mine, or else I'd see it in my life, So I think for most people, that's the case. You write out things that you really desire and long for that haven't yet fulfilled. So I think make it a combination. That's why keeping it simple helps. So I am loved, I am healthy, I am happy, I am safe, all is well, I am free, I am supported, I am living my dream.
And for those listeners, they can't see what you have there is an index card, 3x5 or maybe a little larger. And those are, it's almost, to me, what it looks like are flashcards. Like when I was in school trying to remember all the stuff for college and even high school, they were flashcards. So how do you use those? Do you use them like flashcards, or do you use them? Tell us more.
Yeah, no, I love that you're talking about this. So I was a teacher for 12 years, and I think that's why I love flashcards. And I have different sets of them. They could be really simple, like just white index cards, or you can go, you can make them a creative thing. I have watercolor samples as well that I painted. And so it was a friend who taught me this, on how to make these. These are a little more elaborate with the gold in the back. So I have flashcards that just remind me, like these are my values. And so when I'm creating something for my business, I like to look at my values, or I like to know what I'm focusing on in terms of that. These flashcards are different things I do for my health, because I've been challenged health-wise this year as well. So just things that I could be like, oh, it kind of reminds me, and it gives me like choices. And I think it kind of makes life almost like a game, is what I'm going to say right now. And then I use them I have another set here, and these are like the tools that I use in my work, results that my clients have, and different modalities are, like I said, tools, modalities. And I use these to help me create programs and teach this to my clients. Because I think sometimes you need a visual aid in life.
Yeah, so you're using these affirmations, mainly things that you believe about yourself or things that you want to happen. And you're creating flashcards of sorts on index cards. Sometimes they're a little fancy and sometimes they're just an index card. And you look at them it sounds like, for strength, for remembering something. It's for assisting you in daily life. Now, do you ever use them in meditation or anything like that?
I think I did. I wouldn't say formal meditation where I sat down, but when I was going through that very difficult time, like I had to pull myself out of that dark hole. It wasn't easy, so it was constant reminding, constant rewiring my brain, constant self-encouraging and self-soothing. So the cards went in my pocketbook, and I took them out and I periodically read them many times a day when I was commuting on the train, or you know, definitely before I went to bed and when I woke up in the morning.
Now,
So
did you just read them or did you say them out loud as well as read them
both.
using visual as well as auditory cues? That's awesome. And I know other people, myself included, use self-talk, like the little engine that could. I think I can. I think I know I can. I know I can. Is that similar to your affirmations on your cards? Similar to that concept as self-talk?
100%, because even though it's not, if you're just reading it and it's not audible, you're still directing your mind, especially if it's your own words. You had asked me if I use affirmations that I find in a book. I have a whole set from books, but I think the ones that have been the most effective and that I feel most connected to are my own words.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, is there any other piece of advice or information or story that you'd like to share before we close things up?
I think that this other, maybe having an awareness of this when you're really going through it, or maybe you've just come out of it and you're still a little tired, is what if those really most challenging times of your life have given you the wisdom to contribute to humanity in a really great way? Like what if your most painful, challenging times could be like your greatest contribution?
I like that. So that's a good question to ask yourself, to know if what you're going through is actually creating something most beautiful.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
My website, it is monica-maria.com.
And can you spell that just in case somebody doesn't know how to spell those things?
Yeah, of course. So it's MONICA-MARIA.com.
Great. Thank you again, Monica, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. So fun.
You're welcome. And thank you, audience, for listening to Monica. And remember, there is a way through your difficulty. Please seek out resources and people who can and will help you. Now, if you're looking for alternative tools for handling difficult times or moving ahead in life, contact us at www.resiliency.coach. Hope you all have a blessed day and a wonderful life. Goodbye.